Hey everyone, welcome back. We are in episode 5, season 2. And today I really want to talk about balance. I was thinking about it because actually sometimes things just kind of like sync up and you just keep hearing the same kind of buzzword and the same kind of buzzword and the same kind of buzzword. You're like, okay, I get the hint. I'll talk about this thing. Last week it was forgiveness, right? And I deviated from what I had kind of planned out. And I'm doing that again this week. We are here in New Jersey, and we have about 25 inches of snow outside. So pardon the windburn on my face and the no makeup, because I was like, we're in the middle of a 2-foot snowstorm and we're still gonna get another, like, I don't know, 12 hours of snow. So yeah, I don't particularly care for the cold all that much, so I am not at my most contented, let's say. And so I think balance, it's a good time to talk about balance, right? Being balanced in all things. I am currently writing a dissertation that has to do with work-life balance. And I think that we struggle, there's so much research on it, but we struggle with the ability to balance our personal and our professional lives. And if only those were the only roles that we had to contend with, right? But they're not, right? We have a lot of roles. We have, in our personal life, we are parents, children, friends. We have houses to keep. We have plans and hobbies and things that we do in our personal life. And then in our professional life, we have roles that we play there, right? We have, maybe we're a manager, maybe we are, so many things. And with that role comes other roles and other responsibilities. And then perhaps like you're an academic or you have a business on the side, or, there's so many different things that we have going on in our lives that require us to balance. And balancing, what the literature says as an academic, as a researcher, but also what I know as a practitioner and a life coach, is that balance is a process. I know, a buzzword, right? Forgiveness is a process. I think I said something else the other, grace maybe was a process. I don't know what I said, but at the end of the day, there is no like, oh, check balance, right? There's none of that, because balance is an ongoing, I don't want to say act, right? Balancing act, but it is an ongoing process. So you can feel like, yes, today I got it done. I was like on my A game. And then the next day you're like, oh my God, I'm completely out of balance, right? So when we're thinking about balancing, we do actually kind of have, outside of professional, personal, and academic, perhaps life, we have to stay balanced in our physical, in our emotional, in our mental, in our intellectual, and in our spiritual lives as well. And actually, I'll even go one step further in our energetic lives as well. So we have a lot of ways that we need to stay balanced, and we're not even aware of half of them, a lot of us, right? Like, we're very aware of our physical life, which we're very out of balance in a lot of times, because most people are so focused on their physical and their physical life that they're not paying any attention to their inner life, which is problematic. Sometimes you have people who are so focused on their intellectual life. I am guilty of this, that I don't focus enough on my physical life. That I do a lot. And so I've gotten myself into trouble in the past where, I get very in my head. So I can be at a computer, in a book, recording for you guys, answering questions, coaching, at my computer now, and like I could literally not get up for like 10 hours, which is not at all healthy, right? It's completely out of balance. In another way as well, if you're living too much inside of your head, in your head space, you're not living out enough in your real time reality, which I'm also guilty of. And so physically, we can be out of balance. Intellectually, we can be out of balance. Spiritually, we can absolutely be out of balance, because there are people who are too involved in the spiritual realm. And again, like, you can't live there, right? We're not there yet. We're in a very, I don't know if you've heard this lately being thrown around, but 3D versus 5D. Your 5D, your fifth dimension, is that very spiritual place, that metaphysical realm. Your 3D is our realm, the where we are now, the dimension we're in now. And some of us are kind of, excuse me, 4D, and we're in both, right? We have like 1 foot in 3D, 1 foot in 5D. But if you're too like spiritually in tuned, you're not paying any attention to the world that you're actually inhabiting, right? So there has to be a balance in all things. And nature shows us this, right? Nature demands balance. She always does. So I think maybe is Newton's second law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? That's nature's way of saying balance. I really like, there is this book, I have it over my shelf here, and it's called about, it's like Blood and Honey series, and it's about this idea of this witch who you have to demand balance. So, because she's like a white witch or whatever, and this idea is that if you want to gain an advantage in one way, you have to be disadvantaged in another way. So if you want to pick a lock, you have to break a finger. If you want to see into somebody's, like something you're not supposed to see, you have to lose your hearing while you're doing it. And it's this very interesting kind of give and take, because that is how life is. Like, it is very much give and take. We talked about that when we talked about abundance, and we talked about the law of sowing and reaping. You cannot reap until you've sown. You cannot take until you've given. And so, but even in that, you have to be balanced, right? You can't give so much that you have nothing left, which we've also, I think, talked about a little bit about, pouring out of a fulfilled cup. So it's, everything about life is balance. And balance is really hard because it's fluctuating. Balance is a state of fluctuation. And it's very, if we're not intentional about balance, oh, a little cat. If we're not intentional about balance, it is very easy to get out of balance. It is extraordinarily easy to get out of balance. So a good precursor to balance is moderation. Moderation is a really, really good cursor to seeing if we're in balance or not. And so when we are not being moderate in something that we're giving our attention to, let's say, you're probably out of balance. So I'm going to give an example. What ends up happening after a woman gives birth, right, is that her focus is on keeping her child alive, right? Especially if she's a new mom. She's got to keep the child alive. Got to keep the child alive. Also, huge sense of joy, huge sense of contentment, huge sense of love that comes with having a child, right? You've cultivated it for 9 months. Now it's here. Very excited. And so what ends up happening, I would say 9.9 times out of 10, is that the social media feed for the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years is basically just that child, right? So really think about anybody who's gotten a new puppy maybe, or had a child or something that's sort of like life-changing in that way. And they're very focused on that entity. They're not moderate about it, right? There's no balance of, oh, here's a picture of me and my husband. Here's a picture of me and my sister. Here's a picture of me and my baby. Here's a picture of me and my dog. Here's a picture of me at work. There's no balance, because being a new mother is very, I'm assuming, consuming, right? I'm not a new mother, so I do not know. And I'm not coming against new mothers here. I'm not saying I don't understand it. I'm just saying, as an example that's, pretty relatable, I think, that a lot of us have seen, we get out of balance. I'll give you something else. When we are very focused on, I don't know, let's say getting in a sorority or fraternity, right? Or getting a new job. When we get that job, we get in that fraternity or the sorority, it's all we talk about. It's all we focus on. It's all we post about. It's all we pay attention to. We can do that with pretty much anything, right? Because when we get attached to things, we kind of tend to focus on them, and we tend to get out of balance, and we tend to not be moderate, right? So if you look at somebody's social media, you can kind of tell what they're focused on, especially something like Instagram, because it's just like you can very clearly see where their focus is. And so when we're not moderate in our approach to life, anything, we will get out of balance. When we are out of balance, here's where the problem lies. We're more apt to make not so great decisions where that thing is concerned. I'll give you my example of my own life. When I was very consumed with work, towards the end of me being a teacher, professional teacher in the classroom, I was very out of work-life balance, because in an effort to kind of get away from my personal life and get closer to the people in my profession, I was completely out of work-life balance, because I wasn't happy at my house, wasn't happy in my home situation. So I threw myself into work. But when you throw yourself into work and you're working with hundreds of kids, hundreds of people, it doesn't have to be kids, it's very, very easy to get out of balance, make bad choices, lose your identity, lose your sense of self, etc., etc., etc. So many problems come from us being out of balance. So many problems come from us not being moderate. And I'll even take it back one step further. Why do we get out of being moderate? Because it takes discipline to use moderation. And we don't really like to discipline ourselves. We tend to get emotional about whatever. And when we get emotional and when we don't discipline ourselves, we kind of tend to go overboard. When we go overboard, we're no longer in balance, we're no longer stable, and there you have it, right? So how can we get balance in our lives? Well, boundaries is the one, right? Moderation, boundaries, discipline, all this stuff that I've been talking to you about for the past season and a quarter now, right? Goes back to these fundamental things. They're all interrelated. Because remember, here at Seasons and Signs, we're talking about sowing life, right? And a lot of what we do now as people is sow to death. We sow to things that aren't good for us, right? We sow to imbalance. We sow to, what's the opposite of moderation? I don't want to say abundance, but excess. That's it. We sow to excess, right? We love being excessive about things. We excessively spend. We excessively love. We excessively eat. We're just very excessive. Little cat. And it's very, very much out of balance. So we need to be very mindful, which again, when we're coming up kind of higher, we tend to be aware that everything's interconnected, right? Like, oh, well, I'm out of balance because I wasn't moderate, and I wasn't moderate because I was emotional. I was emotional because I was unhappy. I was unhappy because I wasn't paying attention to, whatever was going on in my life. And it's a snowball. It spirals, right? So how do we get balanced? Well, I know boundaries are tough, but I talked to you about that a couple weeks ago, how we can set boundaries. It really comes down to not living your life on autopilot. It comes down to being aware. Everything comes down to self-awareness, right? Like, and being honest with yourself about that, right? It's one thing to say, well, I don't have time to work out. It's not true, and I talked to you about that before. But it's another to say, okay, I know it. I know I need to work out, and I'm not honoring my body with the choices I'm making right now, but I will work out. Just haven't gotten there yet, right? There's a little bit of grace there. That's nice. It's better though to just say, I don't feel like working out, but I'm going to go do it, because I know that's going to help me be balanced physically, intellectually, emotionally, however, you feel about working out, because it does help you in a lot of different realms. So being balanced is intentional. And again, I talked about intentionality is all going to be interrelated, right? Everything kind of builds on each other when you are evolving, when you're coming up higher, when you're transforming, when you're sowing to life. When you sow life, you reap life in abundance. And what I mean by that is like blessings and abundance, and all these positive aspects of life come from sowing life. And so when we are sowing life, we're aware, we're self-aware. When we're balanced, we're aware of what's going on to make us imbalanced, which means we're not sweeping stuff under the rug, which is easy to do. Like when I was out of balance, which lasted for like a solid 6 months, like from January of 2018 to July of 2018, I was out of balance. Part of that was because of decisions I had made and things that had completely snowballed, and the momentum behind them was so strong. But part of that is because I was like the ostrich, and I stuck my head in the sand and was like, oh, everything's fine. I have everything under control. I'm fine. When no, I wasn't. I wasn't fine at all. But I wasn't self-aware. I thought I was. But I wasn't giving an honest inventory or personal account of what I was doing. And like, it was very clear for people to see that I was not at all in balance. And I refused to see it. I was like, no, this is fine. Like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was like, no, girl, this is not moderate. This is not acceptable. And sure enough, that's when mistakes happen. That's when bad things happen. And obviously that's when I made what was the worst decision of my life. So balance is super, super important. When we're out of balance, we're functioning emotionally, we're not being stable, we're not being moderate. That is when almost always the trouble happens. When we are trying too hard, I guess, really, when we're trying too hard, when we're being too excessive, right? We really want this guy or this girl's attention, and we're doing everything that we can to get them. That is excessive. Stop it. It's not going to be, if you had to work that hard to get them, how much harder are you going to have to work to keep them? Right? Like, we really, really want this baby so bad, and it was just so hard, and like, oh my God. Well, again, just remember, if it was that hard to have it, it's much harder to keep it, right? I'm not saying don't get into relationships and don't have babies, but I am saying that in life, anything that you have to go overboard for, you're gonna have to go overboard to keep. And that is the opposite way of peace. Peace doesn't live in excess, right? It just doesn't. Peace lives in moderation. So take that for what you will. Balance is the topic of the week. And even I'll give you a modern today example, contemporary, up to the moment example. I know I was not being balanced in my negativity about the snow. I hate the snow. I hate the cold. And I knew we were going to get slammed with 2 feet of snow and counting. And my partner loves the snow. He has been excited for the past week about this snowstorm. He's been so excited. And I have been way too negative and way too unfair to him for a lot of different reasons. But really, the snow, his excitement about the snow only triggered my not excitement about the snow. So I was like, yeah, I'm not being balanced in my feelings right now. I am not being moderate in my negativity. I shouldn't be doing this at all. I really shouldn't be. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go out in the snow and shovel. And I did. And I didn't complain, even though, secretly I was like, don't love this. But, and I forced myself out there because I was like, I'm not being moderate. I'm not being fair. I'm not being balanced. I live in this house too. we have a driveway and a thing to shovel too. Like, let me get out there and do my part. Let me be balanced, right? And, didn't kill me. You would have thought that it might have, but it didn't. It did give me windburn though. So on that note, if you like what you are hearing, what I'm bringing to you, please subscribe, tell your friends. If you like what you're hearing, help us keep coming to you. You can donate on Venmo, on my Instagram page. But really, I do really just love to bring this stuff to you guys because it's so, so important. And, got to do our part to help each other out because it's a tough world. So balance, be moderate, set boundaries, and I'll see you here next week.